don't you start with just telling us your name and where you're from?
My name is Christina Severino, and I am from Providence, Rhode Island.
Cool. Tell us, tell us a little bit about growing up in Providence, Rhode Island.
For me, there was nothing really special about the way I grew up. You know, average single parent home, lived with my mom shortly after, had a dad in the home, a stepfather who I consider. And I grew up in the west end of Providence, so it's like for me, the most grungiest part of Providence is probably the most raw, and at the time, it was one of the most violent parts of the city, but I didn't get to see any of that. Like on my block, everyone knew each other. So it was very communal at the time. I grew up going to the Knight Memorial Library. I went to Alfred Lima Elementary School and Gilbert Stuart, which is literally all like within 1 minute of each other. So I didn't get to see much of anything. I was very sheltered and I was protected. And more importantly, I knew my neighbors. So I couldn't just walk down the street without my mother's permission because someone would be like, "Hey, Isabel, do you know your daughter's down here?" So, yeah, like, I can't really complain about my childhood there. I have a lot of great memories with family and friends. So, excuse me, and a lot of those people I still talk to today. So, it was great living on the West End.
So if you had that experience, then how did you know it was violent? From what you heard, or?
From what I've heard from other people that lived in the neighborhood, at the time there was a gang that lived over there. I'm not sure, and I'm not trying to affiliate myself. So, but I remember seeing like flags on poles and candles on light poles. So I knew what that meant because I saw that at home when someone passed away. We would light a candle. So I started putting two and two together, and I started to notice things as I got older at night, like, you know, the homeless people outside and panhandlers at the light. So I think I was just smart enough to make connections, and from watching TV and movies knew that, oh, I'm in like a really like city-ish violent kind of environment.
Classic urban neighborhood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are your parents from?
My parents are from Dominican Republic. My mom came to the United States. She lived in Harlem since she was 12 years old, I think. Yeah, 12 years old. She came to the United States in 1972. So most of her life has been an American life. But because she was raised in Harlem, it was still very Dominican at the time. So many people from Dominican Republic were migrating to New York City. So I have like this unique Dominican American experience. And my father, I didn't really grow up with, but he was raised in the Dominican Republic in a really small town, which was much like Providence, but like more poor, and there's like dirt roads and stuff like that. But my father was a very well respected man where he's from. So anytime I was there, people would make the connection, oh, that's so-and-so's daughter. And he spent some time in Puerto Rico, and he spent some time here when I was, before I was born. And when I was born, he was deported. So he didn't spend much time here in America.
Is he still in DR?
Yeah, he's still in DR right now. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he's still in that same town.
Yeah. But you get to go back and visit once in a while?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't been since 2015, but, you know, it's not like the best relationship, but it's not a bad relationship either. It's just very minimal.
Right. So, growing up in the West End of Providence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go back early. What are some of your earliest interests and hobbies that you can remember?
Earliest interest and hobbies, I would say riding bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in the hood, everyone in my house at least, had a bike. Your bike was your means. It was the only way you could get anywhere because asking for a ride was like asking for a kidney. So I rode bikes. Even though I had limits, it was just something that I did. And I remember my neighbor, who is like my cousin, because we grew up together, her father used to take us to the bike trail over by the Cranston Parkade. And we would we would get there like 10:30 in the morning and come back home. It would be like 3 p.m. on bikes all day. And the bike that I had got stolen. So then my uncle gave me a bicycle that was my cousin's bike. I think it was like a Huffy or something, but it was like pink. It was very retro looking. And that bike for me was like, I know it's corny to say, but it was like my best friend because I was able to do everything. Like it knows my thoughts, my secrets, and places I've been to on the bike. And yeah, I just had it for a long time. So biking for me was like kind of like therapy. With like I didn't know that then, but looking back now, I'm like, oh, this is like it feels good. It's healing. Right. And other than that, I think just like watching movies. I was big on movies. TV, there was a lot of TV, Game Boy at the time, because although I'm not an only child, I kind of had like an only child experience because my siblings are 10 and 8 years older than I am. So, I was like the only child in the house. Everyone was like adults. Yeah, everyone was grown. So I did a lot of self-soothing and a lot of like independent hobbies and things.
What was high school like for you?
High school. High school in Providence has to be a unique thing. Like there's no place like Providence. I don't think anyway, but I went to this high school. It's now called Dr. Jorge Alvarez, which was Adelaide when I first got there. And it was a school that combined a bunch of students that didn't really have a school to go to. And so I'm the first graduating class. And so we had to raise money for our graduation, for our prom, for programs, anything that had to do with outside of the school budget, we had to come up with that because the school had no big budget. And sports, if you wanted to play sports, you had to go to another school. But for me personally, it was very like, it was like meaningless. It was just like, I was just doing whatever. I was bunking class a lot. But I was passing, like I didn't understand what I wanted to do, who I was. I didn't have no real goals. I kind of just was very social. Like I could sit with the goth kids and the anime kids. I could sit with the rappers, the jocks. Like I could sit with anybody in school, but I don't remember like having this big, like impactful thing that happened to me. There were no teachers that really stood out to me. It was just like I just went about life. Like high school was nothing special. The most special, or maybe not special, but the craziest thing that happened was I would like to say I had the first viral moment in Providence without people really knowing. I wrote a blog. It was like a gossip blog. And I was inspired by the remake of 90210. And the character Silver made a blog just talking junk about people in school, and I did the same thing. And I showed it to somebody, but there was an article on there that I didn't want other people to see, so I didn't want to like promote it before then. I was gonna like take it down. And it floated around the school. It spread like wildfire. I think I have like 700 and something views within like 2 to 3 days between like all the schools, Mount Pleasant, Feinstein.
What was it on? What was the blog on?
It was Blogspot.
Okay.
Yeah, and I went crazy. It is silly looking back at it now, but it literally made the world stop, or at least my world.
Yeah. What did it say? What was it about?
It was, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed. So I had one article about these two people that were friends, and I said that they were really dating, that they aren't friends. One was about this guy that nobody liked. He was like this older looking dude, like he was very like Italian. He had a Cadillac, and one time I caught him like eating his boogers. I wrote about that.
This was a student.
A student, yeah. They were all about the students in my class, like, my grade. And then the one that got me in trouble was about these two twins, and I made fun of her weight, which I'm not proud of. And I actually cried that day shout out to Brother Ray who put us together and made me apologize to her. But, wherever she is, I truly, sincerely apologize because it was very, very terrible. But I was like one of those popular, not so popular kids. So a lot of what I said and did kind of had weight on it. And I know that it affected her negatively because she was crying a lot and I hurt her feelings. So I'm not proud of that, but I am proud of the impact. And I'll never forget, actually, there was this one teacher. Her name was Mrs. Fitzgerald. She told me, she asked me, she was like, hey, I heard there's a rumor that you wrote this. Is it true? And I was like scared, like, dang, do I confess to authority? And I was like, yes, I did. She was like, well, your secret is safe with me. And I also want to tell you that it was very well written. And that was the second time someone told me that my writing was good. So I was proud of that, but not the other stuff. So, yeah, not the, yeah. But besides that, high school was nothing special at all.
So, talk about your relationship with music, because I know that that's very important to you and that's affected, you know, the things that you do in life now. So, your relationship with music early on, how did it start? And how did it impact you, and how did it relate to where you come from?
So music for me, first of all, like just being Dominican, there was always music. If you graduated, there's music. If there's a baby shower, there's music. If someone passes away, there's music. Like music is just a big part of the way we come together and kind of like have this unspoken agreement that like things are gonna be okay. And my family is big on dancing, so dancing was always a thing. My cousins and I, we would get together and listen to older albums like Paula Abdul or Madonna or Chico DeBarge, Michael Jackson, Lenny Kravitz. Like there's just so many different names and types of music that I heard growing up. And we would get together and literally just listen to music, no TV, no nothing, just the radio on. And it was at the time where you could put like 5 CDs and it would like rotate. And yeah, and that was just great. And my sister, our connection is music because I gained my love of hip hop through her collection of cassette tapes. And I remember sitting around waiting for my favorite song to come on the radio and like record it and make my own mixtape. So music was just always like healing and like discovering new things and new sounds and being able to put sounds together like a sample. Oh, this came from this, and then following that sample like, oh, this is a Miles Davis sample, and who is Miles Davis? And so I was always just interested in the depth of music and the layers. And also I get made fun of this all the time because people think it's hilarious. But I played the clarinet and I was really good. I played for 5 years. And it was like this secret part of my life because my mom never came to any recitals because she was so busy working. So like there's no video proof. There's no picture. I think I have one picture, but I don't even know where it is. So it's like this secret part of my life that I was just really, really good at. And I had solos at recitals. I was also in this program that the mayor at the time, Mayor Cianci, he piloted this program for WINS. Like you had to be the best of the best in your school to get to that program. And I got there. And I did really well for first couple of days, and then as the days went harder, I started to realize like, oh, these kids are actually really gifted. Like I'm gifted in this space, but like in the grand scheme of things, I maybe not be where I want to be with it. And then for my 6th year, or I think my 5th year, I had an instrument teacher who was just an asshole. So I was discouraged. But besides that, my time playing the clarinet, like learning how to read the notes and picking up melodies from a song and being able to play it, like that musicality to me is so like dope. It's just really cool how people know different sounds and can pick up keys, and that stuff interests me. I even played with production at some point, and nothing serious. Like I didn't produce anybody's music, but I would just put beats together or like banging on the table and recording it and then adding elements. Like I was just always so into the process of music and the journey of musicians and things like that, and being able to go back and making the connection later, like the past connected to the future.
Right. So you founded a podcast, right, called Spark Up.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about that journey and how it all started?
It's actually the 7th anniversary coming up, so this is perfect timing for me. It started in June or July of 2016, and really it had just came from an idea. I heard other people talking about podcasts. I didn't know what it was at the time, but there was this podcast I was listening to, Two Dope Queens, and I was like, this is really dope. Like I could do the same thing. And what interests me more was not so much the talking part, but like the production part, like how it sounded, like the audible production. And so I sat down on the phone with Rudy, who at the time was like Providence's ambassador. Like he had a blog at the time that was picking up a lot of speed. And I was like, what better person to collaborate than with someone who's already highly respected? And things didn't work out for whatever reason, like just timing, and we lost contact. Still love for him and all that, but later I saw him create his own podcast, and I'm like, dang, why didn't he tell me anything? And I was like, you know what, I think this is the perfect time for me to just do it. I was so afraid of like what people would say or how it would sound that I never got the ball rolling. So then I went up to Ruben, who is my cousin and my co-host, and I was like, yo, I've been thinking about starting this podcast. What do you think? And he's like, well, tell me about it. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think it would be fire if we like interview people who are doing stuff in the city. And he was like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Like without knowing the full depth of it and having this deeper meaning, I think it developed and the purpose changed over time. But the initial purpose was to just sit down with people and just have conversations and ask them like, why they do what they do, and just admiring them and respecting them. And it was just two of us, but I was like, well, I don't want it to just be us two. I want other people. So we started to then do like an interview process, and we would sit down with people who we thought would be the perfect match. And we sat down with maybe 5 or 6 people, and then at the end, the only 2 people that actually worked out was Rob and Regina. Rob is my cousin's now husband, then boyfriend. And he's big on speaking and radio. Like his dream is to do like sports broadcasting. He's also a DJ, so it just made sense. And then Regina, I saw her at a vagina monologue at URI that happens yearly. And she was in theater. So there's just like this very, very, very notable presence about her. Like she shines. And I saw that in her, and I was like, she would be perfect for this. And at the time when I met her, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But then when we started interviewing people and failing, I was like, wait, I know somebody. So I called her up, and she was hesitant at first, but it obviously worked out. And so then the next step was finding a studio. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anything about this. We're like the first of its kind here. And there was music studios everywhere. So, we just shopped around and looked at the best option. And I stumbled across this collective, the Daily Note, shout out to Coogee. And they were recording at this studio space in Pawtucket, BOA Studios. And we tried it there, and we stayed there for like 3 years, first 3 years. And ever since then, it's just been a learning things and learning how production and audio and editing and all this stuff that goes into it. I think a lot of people just hear us and they're like, oh, they're just talking shit all day. But like, no, there's intention and there's purpose. And there's also a lot of work attached to it. And so the journey started in 2016, but it like continues. Like we're still learning and we're still growing, but it started from one small idea and then just snowballed into this big, impactful thing in the community. And, I wear it with a badge of honor, and people will like try to diminish it, like, oh, it's just a Rhode Island podcast, or it's just a this. I'm like, but the grassroots of things is so important as well. Like, yeah, I would like to be as successful as like The Read or Rap Radar podcast, but like if it's working here and it's fruitful here and serving the people here, then that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, you have a real love for Providence. You have a very, very specific and distinct appreciation for the city that you're from. How do you feel like that influences what you do? And to what extent does it influence what you do?
It influences everything I do, even things I think of doing outside of this city and this state. Because I remember being a kid with nobody telling you, you're good, you could do it, or keep writing or keep working. Like, there was no really big push. And so I think with media, we've seen the way it can propel people's career, whether it be negative or positive, but I chose the positive side. But then being from Providence, you're also so used to having that small city mindset, like the crabs in a barrel mindset. And I just,
limited scope, right?
yeah. And I just feel like it's important to prove to people that like the sun shines for all of us. It's not just one person. Like, we all contribute to this city, and although it's super small and like it may feel limited, but we're really limitless because of that, because we come from like a special, unique place. And so I think it's important to be proud of where you're from. I wasn't always proud of this city. I wanted to leave. I was so stuck on New York. And I know people be like, oh, I was born in New York, I'm from New York. And they like came here at the age of 3. But, you know, I think it's important to have pride in where you're from, because it is who you are. Like, this city built me. It's important to honor where you're from and love where you're from, because it built who you are. Everything I know about life, whether it's positive, negative, good, bad, whatever has happened to me, and the things and places and people I've experienced have all been in this city. And I think I turned out pretty well. And so I think it's important to highlight other people in other parts of the city that also share that same, those same qualities or those same values in the city. And, you know, there's that corny cliche saying like the grass is greener where you water it. And so I think that's important for me.
Providence has been known as the Renaissance City, creative capital. What's your take on the quality of our creative habitat here?
I will say that we have the people, we have the talent, we have the gift. But as far as the resources, they are very slim, only because we don't have the spaces to create, I think. Like, versus in LA, where you can find a movie studio space and there's just different locales that you can use to, you know, to create your content. But I think also too, maybe connections into the industry. I think that's lacking too.
Talk about some of your favorite guests that you've interviewed or had on your podcast. Like, what are some of the most notable podcasts that you guys have done?
I would say our most notable ones are so much different than my favorite ones. So I would say the most notable ones are the one with the owner of PVD Donuts, Lori. She was so great. And her story is actually really incredible, which is my favorite part about interviewing people. You just don't know the full story. And then Mayor Alorza, of course, because he's the mayor. And also at the time, he just had so much controversy. It was like perfect timing. And Flawless Real Talk, of course. Euro from Young Money. John Hope. We've had so many people that like have given us that extra notch. Like, people like hit us up like, yo, that interview was fire. They were looking forward to listen to it. The one with Sabrina, owner of Stay Silent, which is a notable and also a personal favorite. She's just somebody that I admire and I've been watching closely for years. And yeah, we have so many I can't even think off the top. I think we've interviewed like 85 people or something crazy like that. And you know, I've done solo work. I did one with Anthony, shout out to Dream Vibe. And, just having to have that moment with people past the small talk. Like, these are people I see outside creating things and doing things, but to sit down with them and actually hear the way they think and what they think about is the best part to me.
What shocked you? Has anything ever shocked you that you've heard that was like...
Nothing too shocking. I think what's more shocking for me is sometimes the social media presence doesn't match the actual personality, which is, I guess, not surprising for today, but then it was like I was having to learn like, oh, these people are actually just good at being seen online, but it doesn't translate in real life. But yeah, nothing other than that. I'm not surprised by anything.
How important is social media to you?
I have this love-hate relationship for social media because, first of all, it's done good service for our brand, and I've been able to connect with people outside of the state because of social media. But I think in the long term, in like the bigger picture, I think it'll damage us more than it'll benefit us, especially if you're not careful with how you use it or why you're using it. So before, I used to be on social media all the time, like, this is where I'm eating, this is where I'm at, this is who I'm with. And I had this really deep conversation with my best friend about like just being present, being in the moment. I think social media has allowed us to live in this app and not really live in real life. And I hate that for us, because when you're present, especially if you're present with people you enjoy, those moments, although you don't have them on camera, you cherish them. And social media will trick us into thinking that we have to prove to other people that we're living life, or that we got money, or look at the car I'm driving, look at the house I just bought. And those are all great accomplishments, and I think we all want to accomplish those things. But I think it's important to realize that there are skills that you're building on social media, and then how can you translate that to real life? How can you use these skills that you've learned, whether it's marketing or speaking or camera presence, how can you use this in real life? And how can you connect with people in real life? Like, there's people that I follow and I'll see them in real life and be like, hey, I follow you, and they're like, and like, they're giving me that energy, like, okay, but I think that's weird to me. If I follow you and you follow me, I think it's for a reason. There's something that we like about each other. So why not connect in real life? And social media has taken away that, I think, that urge to want to have that human connection.
So you think, and what you're doing with the podcast, you're connecting with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you think that when you meet some people that you followed and you've seen their presence on social media, when you say it doesn't match, you feel like some people are just more boring, less, like they're whack.
Yeah. No, maybe not whack, but boring.
You don't have to put them out on blast specific, but
boring. Like, there's one person who seemed very ambitious through social media, very outgoing, very not shy, and talented. Like, they have talent, there's potential there. This wasn't a person I sought out to have on the podcast either, which is why my process is different on who I have on the show, because of this one particular person. But then when they came on the podcast, they were very dry, very boring. They didn't have a story, they didn't have a journey. And maybe the podcast was just bad timing for them. Maybe, like, if I interviewed them 10 years down the road, they'd be a complete different person. But I think because of the social media presence they were trying to portray pressured them into doing something that might have been premature for them. So it didn't benefit either one of us, because now we're forcing this conversation. It's like pulling teeth. And then you also are showing that you don't have anything to talk about. So I think it's important to, be careful with who and how, or like what time in someone's career that I have their interview.
It's interesting because that directly applies to, or we can draw a parallel to how that applies to the political division that has been rooted in social media, right?
Yeah.
Because and tell me how you feel about this, given the same kind of theme where like you see somebody on social media and they're this
Yeah.
regarding political, opinions or whatever, or whatever the opinion is, and then in real life they're really not like that, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Have you come across that too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, the most recent and obvious example is the Black Lives Matter movement. When Floyd Mayweather, my goodness, God forbid, when George Floyd was murdered, it was this outcry, right? Like, we had seen this before, but it was just the pandemic. Like, there was just so many emotions involved. And though I understand that vocal activism is very important, like, we should be saying Black Lives Matter if you believe in that. We should be protesting if you believe in that. But there were a lot of people that were going to the protests to take pictures, going to the protests to say that they were there, or to catch the drama that was at the Providence Place Mall. There was this whole debacle that happened. And what it taught me is that, what part do you play in activism? Like, for some people, it's being vocal. For some people, it's doing the behind the scenes work. For some people, it's protesting. For some people, it's doing poetry. Like, I think we all play a part in political change and the political climate, but it doesn't all have to look the same. And social media has led a lot of people to believe that if you have this black square on your grid, that you care about your people. And that's not true, because it doesn't reflect who you are. Like, what I say about my city and how I speak about my peers reflects in the way I walk, in the way I talk, and how I behave in rooms I'm in. I'm saying, hello, hi, nice to meet you. My name is, what's your name? People are like, oh, no. I'm like, no. Yes, I'm saying hi to you. And, I don't have to have a black square on my grid to prove that, because my actions will speak for themselves. And so I think it's just important to be intentional in whatever you do.
All right, sticking with that for a minute, do you think that we're as divided as a country as social media and media makes us believe?
Yes and no. I think it's been easier now to decipher, like, who plays on what side. Like, for a moment, I kind of caught myself being hypocritical and going on, like, a white actress's page and being like, let me see if she's putting Black Lives Matter today. But because social media has been a space where people can express themselves so freely, it almost does reflect who you are as a person. Like, if I'm seeing someone show off a lot, I know, okay, this person's kind of shallow. So I think it has, but there's still kind of like this gray area, because we don't know who's putting on the persona and who's being real. But I think it definitely has given people the space to make their stance. Like, this is what I do, who I am, and what I believe in.
Do you discredit people who choose not to make that stance on social media?
That's something I battle with constantly, because, like, Black Lives Matter is a hashtag, yes, but there's like a real thing behind it. And there are real people getting killed and real families being affected. But I just don't feel like it's everybody's responsibility. And I think because as black people, black and brown people, we feel that pressure to say something. But like, I heard Issa Rae talking about this on the Drink Champs the other day, where she doesn't feel the need to make trauma-based content. Like, her content is just everyday black people. And those stories are just as important. But there is something to say about people that completely ignore it. Like, for example, Beyonce, who's very quiet when she's not, like, marketing something. But she will find a way to show people and express that this is her stance. So you may not see it on social media, but when you turn on Renaissance album, you'll hear a couple things in there that's like, okay, this is where she stands. So I think, like I said, you just have to know what part you play in it. But make sure that the stance is clear. Like, everything has to make sense all across the board.
We'll take a sharp left real quick.
Oh boy.
What do you think of this? 'Cause, well, we're still on the topic of social media. What do you think of this Warak group? Talk about it.
I hate it. I hate it so bad. I hate everything about it.
Well, tell the mic what we're talking about.
Okay, so Warak is a group of, I believe, 3 kids. To me, they look like kids. I don't know how old they are. From Warwick, Rhode Island, which is a very, it's like city but towny. Like there's different areas. There's suburbish type of places. There's rural kind of too. Like it's just this weird mixture of all kinds of things. And historically, Warwick, look at me, I'm trying to rap like them. Historically, Warwick has been very white. And so when you think of hip hop, obviously you're not making the correlation to white culture. And so, you know, they started making these obscene hip hop videos that were going viral, like literally millions of views, hundreds and thousands of views and followers. And I'm like, do I feed into this? Do I laugh at this? Do I hate this? Like a lot of things. And I was like, well, because of the work I do and who I am, I can't support this because I know people who are actually talented. And people are like, well, it's probably a gimmick. Maybe they're really talented. I'm like, okay, well, then when are they going to show that? When are they going to show us the craft, like that they're good at rapping? Like they're not good. They're just not good. They're not good and not the way they walk, talk, dress. And
they're good at getting clicks though.
They're great at marketing. I will give them that. But I just don't like that now some people will reference Rhode Island to that. Like when they think of Rhode Island, they'll be like, oh, Warak. And I'm like, actually, no. That's the last thing on the list. So I hate it. I know that some people are like, oh, they're just funny. And I was like, I don't think anything about taking advantage of what others are seeking and working towards is funny. I don't think it's funny to mock a grind, to mock a journey, or to mock the culture. I think it's very culture vulture-ish. And yeah, they need to be stopped. Like immediately. It's a bad representation of Warwick, even, period. Just, yeah, it's just a lot of, it's bad for the brand.
How do you define hip-hop music?
Hip-hop music to me is, it's like the encyclopedia of Black lives. Like you can see the way Black people think and feel and behave and their experiences, and they're not all the same. There's some that are street, there's some that are intellectual, there's some that are dark and gothic, and there's emo music. Like to me, hip hop is just the story of Black and brown people, and it's poetry too. It's literature to me. Like I think of J. Cole, to me, he's writing books. Like he's also gifted enough to turn it into melody and have wordplay. It's beautiful to me. It's like mathematical almost, scientific. Like hip hop is just so many things, but at the end of the day, it embodies Black and brown stories.
Three hip-hop artists off the top that are, to you,
Okay, to me,
you know, define greatness.
J. Cole, who I love from the beginning of his career till today. Just the way he presents himself too as like a human being is beautiful. The evolution. I think I have this, I'm drawn to evolution. So J. Cole, Jadakiss, who lyrically just still sounds like he has a point to prove. And I think that that's beautiful because he does. We all do. And maybe not to others, but to ourselves. So that's J. Cole, Jadakiss, and then Jay-Z, of course. To me, is the greatest rapper to ever touch a microphone. I think it's gonna be hard for us to see ever another Jay-Z, from branding to marketing to evolution to bandwidth. everything he's created, everything he's co-signed has just worked. And again, who he is as a human being says so much. Like, he wasn't perfect. He didn't have a super clean way that he came into this industry, and the misogyny, sexism, and the cheating, but that's human. And a lot of us have done the very same thing that he's done, but the way he articulates it is what separates him from everybody else. He's a genius. Like, he made 99 problems off the top of his head, and that is arguably one of the best hip-hop songs ever made. So yeah, those three.
I agree. In your personal life, tell us something that scares you. What's your fear?
Oof.
What's your
This
fear?
is deep. That's a deep, deep question. My biggest fear in life is death, especially like death before feeling accomplished. Like, there's just so much I know that I could do, so much potential that I could put to use, and I would hate to just have that end, and also like how it will end. I know that that's dark, but I go into these like zones of like, what will life be like for those that I love and touch after I'm gone? Like, will they miss me? Will they not? Or did I impact them enough? Or did I love them enough? Or did I spend enough time to show them like that I love them? I want people to know that I love them for real. And I'm not the best at that because of all the self-work and the creative work that I do. There's just not enough time in the day. And to me, the day feels like it speeds. So for me, I'm like, I have this feeling of like, I'm running out of time. And everyone will be like, well, you're working on your own time. And I'm like, well, no, I'm working on borrowed time. We're all here on borrowed time. And we don't know. Like, I could not wake up tomorrow. And, you know, it happens obviously to all of us. But it's how and when it happens that scares me the most.
Are you religious at all?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
ask everybody that.
Yeah, so my relationship with religion has always been there. I grew up Catholic. My family, we all went to the same church. It's like 18 cousins, 6 aunts and uncles, and most of them lived here in Rhode Island. So we all grew up going to the same church. Some of us got married in that church, had Sweet 16. Not me, I'm not married. One day. Had our Sweet 16, baptism, confirmation, all that stuff. Church, school on Saturdays. I went through all that. And I didn't really have a connection to God like I wanted to, or like I heard other people in their relationship with God. And I knew about the Bible, but I never studied the Bible. Like, there was nothing that made me interested. I was actually scared of opening the Bible and like scared of that world because it's so powerful, and I didn't know what would come of it. But then when I got pregnant and I was having relationship issues with the daughter of my, the father of my daughter, my cousin's husband now, he invited me to a family and friends event at his church, but it was just a service welcoming, you know, newcomers. And I had my first like life breakthrough, and I was crying and I was emotional, and you know, I was kind of just able to release. And for the first time, I felt something that I never felt before, which people will say is the Holy Spirit. And like just this overwhelming feeling of like things are gonna be okay. And just having that moment led me to believe like there has to be a God, because there's just things that has happened in my life and things I've come away from that I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I got out of that. Or like people I met during the process of learning and doing podcasts that I'm like, there's no way that meeting these people are by accident. Like, these people have invested elements into my life that have changed who I am or how I think. So I know that there's a greater being, and that is an ongoing relationship that I work on. So for me, religion is very important, because you have to have something something greater than you to believe in that will push you into doing greater for yourself.
I agree. 12-year-old Christina is sitting on the side of you. You at 12. What do you tell her?
Oh man, that's almost making me emotional. You about to have an Oprah moment with me. I would tell 12-year-old Christina that you can be who you want to be. And yes, people will judge you and people will question you, but just like you're teaching other people about who you are, you're also learning about who you are, and just allow that to be and look and sound and feel how you want it to feel. That's what I would tell her, because I was running away from myself, and I think if I had just had the courage and the confidence and like support, then I would have blossomed into this, I don't know where I would be, right? Because everything happens for a reason, but I would tell myself to just be yourself, just be you, and that's it.